Hi there, we're here at the European Development Days here in Brussels, and I'm here with Matthias Schmale of the Red Cross to talk about their latest report on migration. Hi Matthias, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So, recently you've published the World Disasters Report 2012 talking about forced migration and displacement. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the message of this report and the key findings?
Yeah. We commission this report on an annual basis for the 20th time, and we've had independent researchers and academics pull together the latest trends and analysis on the topic of forced migration. One of the key things they are pointing out is that there are now more than 70 million forced migrants in the world, so that's about 1 in every 100 citizens of the world, which is a huge number. So that's one important thing. I think linked to the number itself is, of course, behind these 70 million figure is 70 million individual tragedies. But also we think this is not something that is going to go away. What the report looks at is what are the drivers for this incredible number of people. Traditionally, we know conflict has been an issue, and about 40 million of these people are driven away by conflict. What is a bit surprising perhaps is some of the newer trends. So for example, 20 million people are forced by disasters. We've known that, but what is increasingly on our screen is climate change induced disasters. And one of the reasons why the researchers who've written this report are saying this is a phenomenon that will stay and maybe grow is we all know that climate change unfortunately is on the increase and disasters related to that. So they extrapolate that more and more people will be forced to leave their homes as a result of climate change. An example I can give of that is the Maldives or island states, which are clearly threatened by this. If islands go under, obviously people will be forced to move.
Right, and as I understand it, there's immediate impacts of climate change like flooding, and there's also the longer term impacts of climate change which will cause people to be displaced, such as general changes in climate which makes it impossible to live anymore in a certain place.
Correct. You're bringing me to another key message of the report, which is that 20 million of the 70 million forced migrants I've mentioned are in situations of what the researchers call protracted migration, meaning they really have no choice to go home because of conflict or long-term damage to the environment, nor do they have a choice to move anywhere else, because what the report also points out is that attitudes around the world are hardening in general, and people are more reluctant to receive people from other countries, especially forced migrants. So we have 20 million people who are stuck in this terrible situation, and so what the report calls upon everyone, governments but all stakeholders, private sector, to do is to look at really these 20 million people in particular as an issue that needs long-term solutions.
Right. Well, one thing that came out from the report was that generally migrants in their host countries are seen as a burden, or they can be seen as a burden by governments and perhaps by local people. But what you're trying to do is show that they can actually be of value if the right conditions are in place. Yeah. What can those right conditions be?
Yeah. No, you're touching on an important point. We understand, and the report points this out, that most governments will first of all want to protect their own citizens. But especially in situations of long-term migration, but not only in those, it has to be recognized that we're looking at people, people who come with skills, with education, with things to offer. And there are governments around the world that have started to create conducive environments for people, especially those who are there for the longer term. And a concrete measure that governments can take and facilitate is to give people the right to work. Traditionally, governments who receive people and host communities will not want them to work because they're afraid of competition with local population. But experience and reality, and this is highlighted in the report, suggests that more often than not, actually migrants come with complementary skills, with a willingness to do jobs others are not willing to do. So a key message of the report to governments, but also others, is embrace people who come as a contribution to your society and to your country.
Okay, and do you have any examples of where this message has actually got through to governments and they are embracing migrants and seeing them as a value?
The report suggests, my memory of the report's many case studies is two, actually. One is from Kenya, where the Kenyan government has accepted over many years that they have large numbers of people from neighboring countries seeking refuge in Kenya. And an example is the large Somali diaspora. And the Kenyan government, I really think, needs credit for having accepted refugees as being there long term, and for creating an environment that will help them find jobs and be treated properly. So obviously one of the big issues in Kenya is the largest refugee camp, Dadaab. And I think, again, over time the Kenyan authorities have accepted this is obviously not a short-term problem. The camp has been there for 30 years, and the authorities are doing what they can to treat it as a long-term settlement and not as a camp. The other example that is in my knowledge is from Indonesia, through the Indonesian Red Cross. A fairly large phenomenon in Indonesia is internal displacement. Because Indonesia is one of the countries with the largest populations in the world. They have a lot of natural disasters, and as a result a lot of people move internally around the country. And what we've understood is that, again, the Indonesian government has gone a long way in embracing this. So, and that starts with an attitude and mindset thing. So not pushing people back to where they come from, but trying the best they can to integrate them into urban environments, again, by facilitating job search, by facilitating access to health care, things like that.
Okay, well, there's some two positive examples. I mean, your report is also, it's very much about encouraging other governments to step up to this responsibility too. So, well, great. Thank you so much for your time. We were here at the European Development Days. Stay tuned to Devex for more similar videos. Thank you.